John Moose University from 2009 to 2018. He taught physical education in 4 secondary schools for 29 years. Prior to this, during this time, he led 3 departments at faculty, including PE, art, music, dance, drama, and a networked community. Nigel has been involved in training teachers and providing professional development for over 30 years in UK and more recently in India, Brazil, and Taiwan. As a previous member of the Physical Education Association, UK Executive Committee, a current member of the Northwestern Counties Physical Education Association, Executive Committee and Chair of the International Physical Literacy Association, Nigel demonstrates a commitment and passion to promote and support the development of physical education and physical literacy worldwide. He's written articles, delivered lectures, organized, presented workshops, webinars, conferences on physical literacy, personal developments through physical education, ICT in PE, and assessment in PE. Nigel is the editor of the Research Matters section of the APE Journal, Physical Education Matters, and was external examiner for MA in Physical Education and School Sport at the UCLan. He is currently working with schools, organizations, and governments both in UK and across the world. And indeed, we are honored to have a very eminent person, a practical leader in the area of physical literacy with us. So on behalf of the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, Government of India, Khelo India, a warm welcome to our most dignified speaker, Nigel Green. A warm welcome to you.
Namaste, and thank you for the welcome.
I also like to welcome Professor Rosa, who is the president of the Pascaway. Ma'am, warm welcome to you. Early morning, you're with us. So with all the smiles, warm welcome. I'd like to welcome our leader, Dr. G. Kishore, who's the principal director of the Sports Authority of India, Sai region. A warm welcome to you, Kishore, sir. A warm welcome to all my PE teachers who has assembled here. It's because of you that we are having this platform. So once again, a warm welcome to one and all, and over to you, Nigel Green, for this session, please. Okay. Before that, I would like to ask the participants, please to put your questions on the chat box or the QA, and we would be really interested in getting this particular feedback and questions. So please do put your questions on the chat box. Thank you.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to listen into this. I know you're on a series of webinars, and the current climate means that we sit in front of the computer a lot and are not as physically active as we'd like. But hopefully you'll find the next hour or so useful in reflecting on your progress and your practice. What I intend to do is very briefly look at some of the issues in relation to physical education and sport in India. But at that point, I want to make it quite clear that these are issues that are similar throughout the world. So India is not unique. Many of the things I will talk about, I see in every other country that I visit and when I talk to different PE teachers. I'm going to introduce you to the concept of physical literacy, and it is only a brief introduction. If you want more information about that, you can visit our website or get in touch with us. And then what I'll do is I'll reflect on how the PE teacher or the coach can consider their current practice and potentially modify their practice so that they're working towards more of a physical literacy focus. So that's what I'm going to do. From a general point of view, you'll see the pictures on the screen, which indicate that I have been to India on a number of times. I was fortunate enough to be invited in 2016 by Pallela Gopichan and what is now the ELMS group. And we did some work in those early stages, and we've continued to work with the ELMS Foundation and to support their work in promoting physical literacy throughout India. I was also fortunate enough to be invited to work with 3 schools in the Delhi, New Delhi area. Those are heritage schools in Gurgaon, Vasant Kunj and Rohini. And I've had the pleasure of working with a large number of teachers in those schools and trying to get them to improve their practice, again, with a physical literacy focus. You'll see from the picture on the top left is, which is from Hyderabad. I've also been into some government schools and done a little bit of work in government schools. So I am aware of the issues both in government and private schools. So it's not just from one area of focus. This quote, quite simply, is suggesting that we've got to reflect on our practice. And too often throughout a normal day, we just get on and do what we think we should be doing. And we don't always take time to reflect on our practice and reflect on the impact of our practice. And what I'm saying to you, and hopefully you'll do this after today, is that you have got to put some time aside to think, what am I doing when I'm teaching or coaching in a physical education environment? And what is the impact on the children I am working with? And you've got to be critical in relation to that. You've got to look at the positives and the negatives. You need to think, what is every child experiencing? You can see from that picture of Kabaddi, which is a session I witnessed, there were about 14 females who were involved. And as you can see, there are 7 males who were not involved. And in actual fact, during that lesson, which was very short, all the males did was help set up the court. They didn't do anything else. So they had no physical experience during that lesson. And I think you need to put yourself in the child's position and think, if I'm sat down watching someone else playing, am I enjoying this? Am I getting anything out of it? Am I learning anything? And will those experiences encourage me to be physically active for the rest of my life? As I mentioned to you earlier, every school in the world has its own issues. I've had people come to the UK and they can't believe how wet and cold and windy it's been. But I've also been to India, where the temperature has been very hot. The surface has been very dry or uneven. So we all have our issues in relation to what facilities we have, what equipment we have. But we have got to adapt. We've got to be creative and innovative. We've got to use the local facilities that are available to us and the cultural activities that are prominent within our community. From a training point of view, I'm quite aware that many lecturers who teach teachers to teach at university have often done their PhDs or their masters and had some practical experience, and then they've often gone on to teach teachers to teach. So you'd like to think that they are experienced in the art of teaching and pedagogical practices. You will always get also generalist teachers who have very limited physical education experience themselves. And when they go to university, they spend a lot of their time on other subjects like maths and science and English, and very little time on PE. This is one of the key issues in the UK as well. Some of our teachers have only 6 hours of training in physical education over a 3-year period, and they're expected to teach physical education well. So we know there are issues about supporting these teachers. What happens as well when you go out as a new teacher into a new school, you're often told by the older, more experienced teachers how to teach, how to line students up, how to do a warm up, how to do skills, and then possibly a game with a cool down. And these practices are often passed from generation to generation, but often they don't change. So we're doing practices that were done 50 years ago, and we've not moved on. But research suggests there are many other ways of teaching and providing learning environments. So we need to reflect on research, we need to consider what is out there, and we need to change our practices accordingly. Many schools have very little time put aside for physical education. However, I know the best schools in the world, and the best schools in the world have up to 1 hour of physical education a day. And that includes the schools that I work with in India. They are ranked amongst the top schools in India, and yet they still find time to give 1 hour a day to their students for physical education. In many schools, however, in the UK and worldwide, if students get 1 or 2 hours of PE, they're lucky. So again, we need to reflect on how much physical education the children get within the schools. The final issue is about the status of physical education. And I would argue that in many schools, again, across the world, and certainly in India, physical education is seen to be a lower status subject. Maths, English, science, technology, computing, all appear to have this higher status. And that's not just the teachers within the schools, that's the government, that's the parents. So we've got a big job. We've got to change people's opinions of the benefits of physical education and what it can do to encourage them to be physically active for life. And I feel that physical literacy has the potential to change people's thinking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you to physical literacy and then get you to think about your practice and how your practice might change in relation to this concept. First of all, we move within the womb, and when we're born, we learn about ourselves through interacting physically within different environments. As we grow and throughout life, we make sense of the world by exploring it physically. So we learn by our physical interactions. We develop and grow through our physical interaction. So physical interaction is the key to our development. As an individual, we have an innate desire to move within our environment. As we explore it physically, we learn about our environment and our capabilities within that environment. As we experiment with different movement forms in different environments, we become more competent, more confident, and this increases our motivation to engage physically. If we continue to be provided with challenges that are appropriate for our capability, then we will continue to develop our confidence, physical competence, knowledge and understanding, and motivation throughout life. Our experiences then are very significant here, and their experiences influence our decision to engage in the future. If we have positive experiences, particularly at school, particularly through physical education, then we are far more likely to want to continue getting involved in physical activities in the future. Movement is part of our human existence. It's a necessary element of good health and enjoyment for life. So if we don't move, we're not allowing ourselves to flourish. Historically, we had to interact physically within our environment to survive. We had to hunt, we had to fight, but we also chose to dance and do other activities which helped us from a social and inclusive point of view. So physical activity allowed us to thrive within our environment. In our current environment, and particularly in this current time with the COVID issue, it's very different. We can survive without physical movement. We can eat, we can work at computers, and we have everything to hand. All our washing can be done by other people and so on. So we have to choose whether we engage in physical activity. And remember, our choices are influenced by our past experiences. So again, put yourself in a child's place. If that child does not have a positive physical activity experience from their lessons with you, then there's less likelihood of them wanting to be physically active for life. We're designed as humans to move freely in a range of environments, and we use our physical and personal qualities to do this. We all have different capabilities. None of us are the same. And what physical literacy does, it suggests that we should get the most from our physical capabilities by being active for life. As we take part in these different experiences, we experience them not just from a physical point of view, but from an affective point of view and a cognitive point of view. Cognitive relates to our knowledge and understanding, and affective relates to our confidence and motivation. Every experience we have will leave an imprint in relation to how we look at things in the future. If we have positive experiences in physical activities, we'll want to repeat them in the future. But if we have negative experiences, then we're more likely to be put off physical activity for life. As I mentioned just before, each one of us not only is different in relation to our physical, emotional, social, cognitive capabilities, but we're also different in relation to our past experiences. We've all been brought up in different environments with different people experiencing us. And those experiences we bring with us throughout life. Those experiences can be helped and supported by parents, by teachers, or coaches. And again, they influence what we decide to do in the future. Just looking at this chart and think of yourself and your children who you teach or coach. If you look at the top line, you will see that if children are motivated, are confident, are physically competent, and have the knowledge and understanding, then they're more likely to engage. And recent surveys by Sport England and other organisations have proved this, and that's with children and with adults. But if your children aren't motivated, then what you might see is apathy not wanting to get engaged. If your children aren't confident, then you might see them being anxious and worried about getting engaged. If they're not physically competent, then you might see them being frustrated and therefore choosing not to engage. And if they don't have the knowledge and understanding, then you might see them being confused. So as a teacher, you have to take all of this into account to make sure that you're engaging the people who you're working with. And it is our disposition or our attitude that influences whether we will get engaged in physical activity or not. And this disposition or attitude changes throughout life. If you think of yourself as a child, you were probably very keen to get outside and play any local games. It might have been cricket, it might have been kabaddi, it might have been coco, or it might have been climbing trees or running around in the local area. You are keen to do that. You have that disposition, that attitude. You would probably have had that throughout your school. You wanted to play all the activities and sports that were being provided for you. You've chosen to be engaged in physical activities throughout your life, usually the ones that you've enjoyed the most or found the most success with. So your disposition in most cases is to be physically active. But there are times in your life when this disposition will change. In the current COVID situation, you're restricted in how much activity you can do because of where you can go, who you can do it with. You are often restricted when you start working for a living because that takes time away from you, or whether you have a family because you have to devote time to the family, or whether you have to travel long distances to work. So your disposition, your attitude, your decision to be physically active depends and will change throughout life. Think now about the positive experiences that you've had while engaging in physical activity. Think how these have affected your desire to keep being physically active throughout life. I'm sure many of you have enjoyed challenges that are related to physical activity, whether that's playing in a team or climbing a mountain. Whatever you've chosen to do, these will be positive experiences. How did you feel? Why did you feel like that? And then think of the times that you've had negative experiences in physical activity. What has affected you? You might have felt unsure or challenged beyond or beneath your capabilities. And this might have put you off physical activity. So the environments you've been in are absolutely crucial to whether you will enjoy and learn and flourish through physical activity. When you're being challenged, you need the challenge to be realistic and achievable to wherever you are at, whatever your capabilities are. We know that what individuals want from physical activity experiences is that support, that challenge, that feedback that helps them move forward and make progress. And if they've got that confidence in the support, then again, they're more likely to try things and be successful, which will again help them move forwards. Progress, however, needs to be considered from a holistic point of view. And this is, I think, the subtle difference here. Most PE teachers just look at physical development. What we're saying in physical literacy is if that you don't think about the affective and cognitive growth and development, you're not developing each individual holistically. And therefore, the power of what you are doing is not as effective. Teachers, parents, and coaches need to be aware of this, and they need to provide the experiences that allow individuals to develop not just physically, but emotionally and cognitively. If we want a rich life, it's essential to provide a wide range of activity experiences. And ideally, schools will be the place to do that. Our local communities will have some provision, but hopefully schools will have that wider provision. And if we can get children experiencing positive, rewarding activities, then that will help them to learn and to grow more confident. That breadth of experience must also be balanced by a depth of experience, because just giving people a taster of an activity is not enough. We want them to learn through it, to understand, to develop through an activity. So we need to give them sufficient time in an activity to learn all about it, to develop the skills, the knowledge, the understanding, and to work together with others and to enjoy that activity. They'll be more likely to want to do that in the future if they do. We also must remember, as I've mentioned before, that every individual is unique. That means we've got to provide experiences that are differentiated for each individual. So we might give one sort of challenge to a number of children, but for others, we might give slightly different challenges within a lesson. Now, this is difficult for a teacher because you've got 30 children with 30 different experiences and 30 different capabilities. So you have got a lot to consider when you're planning and running your lessons and sessions to make sure you're catering for every child's need. Every individual must be appreciated for being on their own journey. Their experiences are unique, and we want to make sure that we can help them engage throughout life. But if we're going to reflect on their progress, then we need to think about the children's experiences as an individual. Reflecting on their motivation, their confidence, their physical competence, their knowledge and understanding from a personal point of view would allow us and them to consider what challenges they should be provided in the future. There's absolutely no need to compare one child with another because we're all different. We've all got different experiences, different capabilities. What we need to do is we need to reflect on the progress that each child makes. Our meaningful experiences need to be purposeful and worthwhile to the participant. They need to be engaging and relevant to their previous experience and rewarding in some element of progress, success, pleasure, or satisfaction. If we can do this, this will enhance an individual's self-confidence and self-esteem and encourage them to be physically active for life. As you can see from this diagram, what we would like to see of children leaving your schools are the following attributes. And again, at this stage, I think it's quite good to think about the children who have perhaps just left your school and moved on to either further education or to work in the community. Are they children who want to take part in physical activity, or who have the confidence to take part in a range of different activities, who can move efficiently in those different activities and know they'll be supported when they make progress? Can they work independently and with others? And do they know how to improve performance in different physical activities? Do they know how physical activity can improve their health and well-being? And do they have the confidence to plan and put into practice a physically active lifestyle? If they do, if you can say this about the children who you work with, then I'm quite sure that you're doing a very good job. I'm just going to show you a video now, which to me sums up what physical literacy is, and at the end provides you with the definition. So we'll just watch this, and then we'll have some questions after that.
It's about first steps and active play. It's about being active with friends.
Nigel?
Can't see the
Yeah, Nigel, this Sujit, you
YouTube
have
video. Nigel,
to,
the video is clickable.
can
The
you,
video's not playing.
Yeah, no,
No.
you have to please unshare the screen and you share the entire screen. Please share the entire screen. Hi, Nigel. Yeah, please share the entire screen, which is a top left option. When you're sharing screen, top left. Top left. Click on share screen. Top left.
Yeah, share screen's on the bottom of mine.
Yeah, so when you click on that, when you click on share screen, at the top left is screen. It says screen at top left.
Yeah.
So click on that. Yeah. Now,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, perfect.
It's about first steps and active play. It's about being active with friends and family. It's about recreation and being outdoors. It's about learning and practice. It's about education, making progress, and a greater understanding. It's about fitness, challenge, competition, and the success it could lead to. It's about expression, performance, imagination, and culture. It's about enjoyment, every day and for life. This is physical literacy, the motivation, confidence, physical competence, knowledge and understanding to value and take responsibility for engagement in physical activities for life. Physical literacy, choosing physical activity for life.
Okay, so at this stage, I'm going to stop and see if there's any questions in relation to what I've said so far.
Nigel, you could put certain things where our participants could use. You can just put in one or two questions where they would start interacting on the chat box. They could give an answer.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So shall I stop sharing at the moment? Probably best. Yeah.
So the participants, please do put your answers on the chat box right now. Nigel is going to post certain questions and let's see how good you respond to it.
Yeah, Nigel, one of the question is, how do you make physical education in a more scientific way in a place like India? That's one Nitin Kumar.
Okay, so I'm not sure what you mean in a more scientific way. I'll go on to explain, and then
He
perhaps
probably means more structured approach to physical education. Probably.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a few things here. I think what PE or where PE has possibly gone wrong in the past is that it wanted to be seen as an academic subject, and it wanted to get a status or to raise its status, and therefore it adopted a lot of scientific support from psychology, physiology, and so on. And unfortunately, I think what's happened is this has dominated the work done in universities, and what we've lost is the practical and the social elements of physical education. So I think rather than saying physical education should be more scientific, I think physical education should be more practical, and we should teach children and provide environments that allow them to flourish as individuals from that point of view, rather than sort of passing and sitting exams. So I don't know whether that answers the question, but it's possible it might. So
Right.
So just a minute, I didn't want a question because we could have the sessions later. I just wanted him to have an interaction where he poses certain things and they answer in the chat box. That's what I was wanting. I was wanting Nigel to do. So let him put something where we start up, that can actually gear up in terms of them entering the chat box.
It's a difficult one, because I think what I would ask all the physical education teachers and coaches who are on this webinar is, do they feel that they are promoting not only their own physical literacy and making progress in their own physical literacy, but are they creating the positive environments that allow the individuals they're working with to flourish and develop from a physical, effective and cognitive point of view? And I think as I go through the next set of slides that I've got, I want you to reflect on your practice in relation to that. So what I've done with you there is given you more of a general understanding about physical literacy, so you understand the concept a little bit, and then I'm going to use that to reflect on or ask you to reflect on your practice. Okay.
Yeah, so you could continue. That's fine.
Okay.
Okay. I think Sujit, could you speak in Hindi? That's the case. What Right and Nigel had mentioned for the participants. Hope the participants very clear to you what Nigel has explained.
Yeah, if they can go back on that, that's good. Okay, I'm gonna move on. As I said, this is the third part, and what I'm getting you to do is, or what I want you to do is reflect on what you currently do as a teacher or a coach. And if you look at the diagram, you'll see the nice little triangle at the bottom. And I'll be honest with you, when I first started teaching, which is 40 years ago, I thought that was part of my role, to introduce all the children to a range of activities and then start selecting out the better players for my teams So my school could be very successful in local and national competitions. And, you know, everyone would think I'm a great teacher because my rugby team is winning all the cups for the school. The problem with this method or this model is that we lose children very early on. They come to your lessons, they might come to your practices for the teams, but when they're not selected, they lose interest. So let's get it right from the start. The physical education teacher's role is not to produce the champions of the future. I would argue that you should be assessed on how many children are regularly physically active every day when they leave your school, and how many will continue to do so throughout life. Because if we can increase that number of people who want to be physically active, then we're more likely to get these champion sportsmen anyway, because there'll be more people physically active. And as the diagram suggests, attitude changes everything. I mentioned disposition earlier, which is effectively the attitude. As a teacher, you've got a responsibility to engage everyone. You've got a responsibility to help develop these positive dispositions towards physical activity. By you creating an environment that allows every individual in your class to develop their motivation, confidence, physical competence, knowledge and understanding, then you are more likely to support those attitudes being positive and the young people being more likely to engage in physical activity for life. I have said earlier, it is a challenge, and this is why physical education teachers are very skilled. You have large classes of children, limited facility, very much changing weather. And what you've got to do is work with all these children to create that positive disposition towards being physically active. We want your children to be like the lady on the top of the diagram, not like the little boy at the bottom of the diagram who's not so keen in engaging in physical activity. What you've also got to remember is, as a PE teacher, you've got your own experiences. As a coach, you've got your own experiences. And these are unique to you. You were taught in a certain way at school. Your parents may or may not have provided you with a range of experiences. Your friends may have encouraged you to be physically active. You will have learnt different things, hopefully, through your teacher training. And then when you've gone out teaching, you'll have learnt different things through different schools, different departments. I was fortunate enough to have worked in 4 different schools with lots of different PE teachers, as well as a university where I've gone out and been training teachers and gone out to see lots of different schools. So you are constantly learning. Hopefully you'll have professional development experiences like today and the courses you're involved with. And hopefully you will be reflective, as I mentioned at the start, because your experiences will influence what you do and how you do it. And unfortunately, what a lot of us do is we teach like we were taught. And as I said at the start, what happens is if practice is constantly repeated, we don't move forwards. So we're still doing, and I still see what people were doing 50 years ago when I watch people teach. Some people do not move on. So as practitioners, you've got to recognize that you need to be reflective and you need to modify and change your practice in light of the experiences that you have. You've also got to take into account lots of other things, which makes your job incredibly difficult. Your country, your state, your school will all have certain curriculum guidelines, certain values, certain aims. You will have a certain amount of time that you're allocated to different classes. You will have certain facilities and certain equipment. You will have certain teachers. And you will have to take that all into consideration when you're planning your programs. We can't just take a program and put it down into a school. It has to be modified to each school. So for those of you that want a specific curriculum plan, unfortunately, that's not the case. You need to work that out with the people in your school, the people in the local area. You need to talk to the children to see what they're interested in learning and so on. And that will then influence what you provide, which will influence the students' experiences. So again, your role as a PE teacher is a very challenging role. At the IPLA, we suggest that you need to think very carefully about the individual. And the individual should be the heart of your planning and your practice, your pedagogy. You need to think about how you promote a motivating, positive learning environment for everyone. So when you're watching your class working, you need to see that they're all engaged, they're all busy, they all want to do more. You also need to see the confidence within them, so they're not stood at the side, not getting involved. And by encouraging them to have tasks that they can master, challenges that they can be successful with if they work at it, that will allow them to improve their competence and confidence. And by improving their competence in a range of physical activity environments, we also develop their confidence, which develops their motivation. By improving their knowledge and understanding, that also feeds in to that confidence and competence and motivation. And by giving the children more responsibility to challenge each other, to learn from each other, to lead and to have teamwork opportunities, to be individuals as well as partners, as well as groups. And then to finally give them the opportunity to reflect on their progress and then decide on what they need to do next. So if we are considering a best way to promote physical literacy, then following those points is key. But then I'll bring you back, because it then comes back to you as a teacher. Your philosophy, which has come from your experience, will influence what you do when you're teaching. It will influence the range of opportunities, the curriculum that the children get. It will influence how the children are taught and how their progress is monitored or assessed. Again, at the IPLA, we believe it's essential for participants to have the opportunity to experience a wide range of activities, to cater for individual aptitudes or preferences. We don't all like the same activity. Some of us like cricket, others like hockey, others prefer swimming. But unless we've had experience of an activity and enough depth of experience in that activity to learn about it, to become competent in it, to become confident in it, then we're not in a position to choose. So a range of activities that are broad but also deep is important. Sufficient time on each activity. It's also good to have activities that are culturally relevant, because when we've got opportunities outside of the curriculum, it's more likely that we'll engage with them if they're being provided within the community, if the facilities are available within that community. So use culturally relevant activities. Make sure they are safe and relevant to the participants. And here we need to be clear as well. We should not be teaching to the age of the child. We should be teaching to the stage of their development. Each one of us is different. So we can't say at grade 6, we should be teaching this. Yes, we'll have a general idea, but some of our grade 6 students will be far in advance of others. And some of them will be much further behind, both from a physical, affective and cognitive point of view. So we need to take into account of those individual differences. And then we need to create an environment that is safe for them to learn in. Our pedagogical approaches need to engage and include everyone in your class, no matter what their ability or disability. So you don't have children who are sitting out because they can't do it. You as a teacher have got to find ways of including those children. Children should be allowed to work by themselves and in groups, because we want them to develop independence, teamwork and leadership. We should gradually give them more responsibility. And even children who are very young like to take responsibility, whether that's organising equipment, organising the others, helping each other to teach, to learn. Young children like to do that. And we need to challenge everyone at the right level. We need to challenge them to be creative and innovative. But we've got to know where the individual is starting from. When you get your new class, whether it be in a elementary school or a high school, you may not have taught those children before. So you've got to know where they are starting from. What are their experiences? You may well have an idea of what you've done with classes of a similar age in that subject before. You may well have had particular objectives or outcomes, and the session may well be planned, progressive, well-paced for the participants. However, unless you really know the children you're working with, you don't know what their previous experiences are. So you need to find out what their previous experiences are. Otherwise, the challenges might be too difficult or too easy. You might move too quickly or too slowly. So you need to look for a starting point. And that's not just from a practical, physical point of view. That's from an effective and a cognitive point of view. because we want to know how children interact socially, emotionally. We want to know what they know and understand, as well as what they can do. One way of doing this is what I call an authentic core task. So if we are using football or gymnastics to teach the group, then we use football or gymnastics to provide an authentic core task. And if I look at the football example, what we might do is split our team into our class into groups and ask them to lead a group to create a sequence that demonstrates a range of football skills, so passing, heading, dribbling, goalkeeping. So we're looking at their creativity, we're looking at how they interact with each other, and we're looking at their physical skills as well. We're looking to see how they demonstrate those individual skills, and then we'd put them in a small game to see what skills they can use, how they play with others, what tactical understanding they've got. We might then put them into a group to analyze this. So we're looking at their criticality and so on. Similarly, we might do the same thing in gymnastics. We might ask them to demonstrate a range of individual rolls, travels, flight and balances on floor and apparatus. We might then ask them to create a sequence with a partner that includes those activities and then compare that with a partner. So they're able to reflect on their strengths and differences. So what we're looking for is activities that we can stand back from, that the children can do, and we can get an idea of where they're at from a physical, affective and cognitive point of view. That then allows us to plan what we do next. And when we're planning, we need to think about the challenges that we're providing. I'm sure in your teacher training, you looked at Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, which is on the left of the slide. And what we're looking for is to find that area that's going to make a difference, that's going to challenge the individuals we're working with. I like the little diagram on the right. If you think of the yellow, if it's too comfortable for them, they get bored. If it's too hard for them in the red, then they'll panic. But if that challenge is just right for them, then we're going to stretch those children and make sure that they develop and move forwards. Again, that little quote I think is very good, because there can of course not be one magic recipe. Teachers must seek to provide meaningful and well-adapted challenges so that all students have an opportunity to work in the space between I can and I cannot, that comfort and that panic. Physical education teachers should aim to enact an openness for the presence of uncertainty and make challenges which are within reach of students so they experience that tension of uncertainty of the outcome. We want them to achieve something, but achieve something by effort, by work. How do we do that? Well, one of my pet hates when I'm watching people teach is the lines I see on the left of the diagram, where at the start of every lesson, everyone's lined up, where at the start of every practice, we've got groups lined up, and there's one ball between 6 people or more. What I like to see are activities on the right, where everyone's engaged, whether that's individually or with a partner or in groups. They've all got challenges. And this will very much depend on your pedagogical approaches. Again, what I see a lot of, if you're aware of Mostyn's spectrum of teaching strategies, are practice and command. Command, I do, you do. I say, you do. Practice, I say do this, you do it. I see a lot of that. I see less of the other teaching styles that you can see around the lady with many hands and many arms. I see very little of reciprocal work where children are asked to work and provide feedback to their partner, therefore allowing them to reflect on what they're trying to learn, to being a critical friend to the person they're working with, which effectively would give you 15 teachers in a class of 30. Providing inclusive activities, for example, on a high jump, where children who are not as able have a lower bar to go over, children who are more able have a higher bar, and the most able have an even more challenging bar. Or by using discovery methods, where we provide challenges for children and they have to find a way to create a sequence, to develop a tactic that will break down a defense, for example. So teachers have a full range of strategies that they can use. And the strategies need to be appropriate to the children they're working with and the situation they're in. We shouldn't just use the strategies we're used to using. So you need to think about expanding what you do. When we look at judgments, we need to reflect on the child as a whole. We need to reflect on their progress in relation to their social, emotional, physical, cognitive domains. So it's a holistic reflection, not just on their physical skills and not just whether they know the rules of hockey, for example. Our reflection needs to be based on criteria, not on how one child compares against another, because that's of no use. As I mentioned earlier, we're all different, we all have different capabilities, and we all make progress at different stages. So comparing us is no point. Comparing those different apples, there is no value in that. The judgment should reveal the journey that the child has been on and should lead towards future challenges that the child might want to take on in relation to their affective, physical and cognitive domains. Certainly in the early years, these judgments need to be teacher-led or practitioner-led, and then gradually the student or pupil becomes more involved in that until you get to the stage where the student is doing their own reflection and setting their own targets. In relation to lessons then, and I'm sort of summing up here what I think we should see. Children need to be taught in safe learning environments. The lesson or session needs to be planned with clear learning outcomes that are related to the physical, cognitive and affective domains. Right from the start, there should be an initial engagement activity that encourages every individual to make links with the previous session and prepares them for their session to come. The session you then do needs to have progressive and differentiated challenges, both individual and group focus, that move at a pace and with a challenge that is right for each individual. So they need to be differentiated. Sessions need to conclude or include enough time for related games or performance activities and throughout the session and at the end of the session, there should be opportunities for reflection and setting future targets. If you can have that as a general outline for your lessons and sessions, then you're very much on the way to promoting physical literacy. So for you as a teacher, first of all, your philosophy is the key. Make sure your philosophy is appropriate. And then think, is the activity I'm doing is purposeful? Does it have clear goals that are worthwhile for the holistic development of the individual? Is it engaging? Will the children you're working with be motivated and challenged according to their capability? Is the activity relevant and productive? Is it progressively challenging and interesting to the participant? And then finally, is the activity rewarding? Will it boost their self-esteem and allow them to make progress and getting satisfaction from their engagement? If you do, then I'd argue you are well on the way to allowing individuals to flourish and make progress on their physical literacy journey. You're allowing individuals to develop their physical potential, to grow in their self-esteem, to realize that commitment is really important, the importance of enhancing their health, having confidence, and taking responsibility. And finally, I want you to understand that physical literacy as a concept is now being promoted throughout the world. In Canada, it forms a major part of every physical education curriculum and sport-related activity. Similar in Australia and New Zealand. In America, physical literacy underpins their curriculum. In India, many areas of India are now starting to understand physical literacy and how it can help and impact, but we've got a lot of work to do. India is a massive country. Likewise, in Europe, some countries are far more further along their journey than others, but the concept is growing and developing in European countries as well. And what I would encourage you to do is to have a look at the IPLA website for more materials, and also get in contact with us if you want to learn more about physical literacy. Okay, I'll stop there and we'll be able to pick up any of the questions.
Thank you, Nigel. It was indeed a wonderful session. You can have some water. I think it's a marathon
Yeah.
session. Yeah. So we could take up some of the questions. I think Sujit also was there around. Sujit, maybe you could take it and we could alternate onto questions. Sujit, you're on mute. You need to unmute.
Yeah. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can ask and I could take the next one.
Yeah. It's quite a very interesting session, Nigel. I think there are a lot of questions. People are asking some very basic questions, as in terms of what is the difference between a game and sport. I mean, that's a very basic question, but I guess a lot of people have that.
Yeah. Okay. So quite simply, games will have a certain amount of rules, but could be adapted, I would say. Sport is more formal and more fixed. It has rules. It has time. It's had teams and so on. So from a fairly basic point of view, yeah, sports and games, they are similar. Often games will be more informal rather than formal, like sport is.
Yeah. So there's another question from Yuraj. How to create an awareness, because physical education is unable to get this status. So what do you think could be done, an effective method to popularize physical literacy and physical education in India?
Yeah, I think there's a few things we've got to do, and many of these are being done. First of all, we've got to talk to politicians, and our work with Lele Gopichan and the ELMS team is doing that. We need to influence politicians because they influence government guidelines, which then influences practice. We've got to share the benefits of physical education and physical activity with parents, with fellow teachers, and with others within the community. And we've got to help them understand how important engaging in physical activity is for our holistic health and well-being. If we do that, then they're more likely to support us in providing our physical education.
Right.
Thank you, Nigel.
Yeah, one question by Roshan. He is asking, how do you conduct activities in a very limited space, and if there are lesser number of equipments?
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things I've done is been fortunate to travel around the world, and I went to Nepal, and I traveled up this valley to 2 tiny schools. I think there were about 30 children in each school. I think there were about 3 teachers, none of whom had any physical education experience or training. And both schools were in a rural environment, so they had a bit of rough land, a little bit of a flat area, not much. One was virtually on the top of a mountain, so it had steep sides on 2 of the sides, so very little area. And when I got there, I thought, what can I say? But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, you know what, you can do this. And there are many games and activities within that local community that we can utilize. So we need to find out what games are played within that area, because they will have developed over the years within that community. There were many athletic type activities, throwing, running and jumping, that can be done. I call it cross country, but running around. I mean, it was a wonderful area to be in. Running through the bush, running around the rocks, jumping from one place to another is challenging. Gymnastics activities can be done. Balancing on rocks, jumping, using each other to work with. Dance types activities can be undertaken. And with creativity, many sort of games types activities can be developed in a small area. And I would ask you to get the children to be creative and make their own games, because that's all part of their learning. So once you start to unpack it, a whole range of activities can be undertaken in a very small area. I think what you need to do is open your minds a bit and not just think of cricket and of hockey and of badminton, because in most cases those aren't feasible. So you just need to be creative in the space that you've got. But that's a great question.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nigel. One of the problem we come up, because you've been in India, in terms of the girls' participation. So how do we motivate and get in more girls to involve in physical activity? What would your suggestions be that?
Yeah, I think again, girls have been a problem throughout education, and it stems from the traditional matriarchal role of the woman to bring up children and so on, which has permeated many societies for many years. I'd like to think we've moved on from that, and we have in many societies, but in others, we still see girls as having a particular role, and that they perhaps shouldn't be as much engaged in physical activity. However, what I've seen, where girls and boys are treated equally, then as many boys are engaged as girls. And where the teaching quality is high and inclusive of everyone, then you will find that the girls will be equally engaged. So often it's our heritage, expectations that hold us back. And I'll give you an example. I taught in one. Well, I worked with Rohini, one of the schools, heritage schools, and I'd seen a hockey lesson the last time I'd been there, and I'd spoken to the teacher, and I said, "Well, this isn't really as good as it should be," and we talked about the reasons why. The day after, he came back to me and said, "Nigel, come and watch my lesson," and he transformed it because he'd given the better girls who were good at hockey the opportunity to teach and coach everyone else in small groups. And they were doing it and they were loving it. And they came over to me and said how much they enjoyed it. I went back to that school about 4 months later and watched the same group. And they came over to me after that session and they talked to me for about 20 minutes, explaining to me how they enjoyed what they were doing, how they enjoyed setting their own learning targets, how they enjoyed being part of the teaching and creating the right environment for them all to learn and to support each other. And they were so enthusiastic. They were tremendous. I actually got them back and did a video of them. And it was like 40 minutes of questioning. And they were phenomenal. So I would say to you, it's often the teacher or community's approach to working with girls rather than girls as themselves. Boys and girls, if they're taught well, will all flourish. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. There's a question by Anjana. She's actually asking that how do you motivate parents whose children want to pursue their career in sports, but parents oppose as they don't find any future in sports?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, and many countries have different ways of doing this. In the UK, we've tried a number of different systems, and it depends. And again, this comes back to the philosophy. Do we want people to focus on just being great at academics or just being great at sport? Or can we do both? And my argument would be is we want to help develop balanced individuals. And a balanced individual will have an education, but they will also have experience of music, of dance, of art, of physical activities, and so on. And so it's our role as teachers to provide the environments that allow them to flourish within those different areas. Now, a lot of parents will see academic success as being the most important thing. And yes, academic success does help people progress. But I know, and I'm sure you know, many, many individuals whose character, whose personality far outweighs their academic capability and allows them to enjoy and flourish through life. And I think we've got to ask ourselves, what are we doing in education? We're wanting to help individuals flourish holistically. So a balance of physical and artistic and musical and mathematic and literary and so on is the key. And you know, we've just got to make sure that parents are aware of that. I mean, I could quote some things that suggest that surveys done in the UK, children who get more physical education are better academically. I don't necessarily want to do that because I'm not claiming that that is absolutely true, but I think a balanced education is really important.
Yeah, so just the last question for you two. Then we'll get into the remarks.
Yeah. Sure. Can I? This is a tricky question which Shivangi is asking. She's saying that how can a person who is not very successful in his game become a good example for his students when he becomes a coach? So can an unsuccessful athlete become an inspiring coach, and how does that happen?
I think that's actually quite an easy question. I would ask all the teachers, what activities do they feel the most confident in? Have they got a range of experiences? And they'll probably quite say yes. And you might find one who's really good at cricket. But as a teacher, your role is to prepare children by giving them a range of experiences. So you have to teach cricket as well as you teach every other activity. So if you're teaching basketball or you're teaching dance, you have to be able to teach that equally well, because you are teaching the child. You're not teaching the activity, you're teaching through the activity. So you're teaching the child and you're trying to move them on physically, effectively, and cognitively. So I would argue, if you are a good teacher, it doesn't matter what activity you're using, you're providing a positive learning environment for the children to learn through and to develop and grow through.
Yeah, absolutely. Ma'am, can I just ask one more question? I think I just thought.
Because I wanted them to, okay, fine. Just last question. Yeah.
Just last one. Shiju's, the question is, can you explain whether a PE teacher should focus more on stages of development or age of development? Because
okay, I think if they've been listening, it's stage. Every individual is different. Every single one. Again, if you go back to the class where you were in school, you were probably one of the more able. Most PE teachers tend to be the more able students. Think of the spread of abilities in your class. And you might have been up here and there was some down here and you've got everything in between. So if we're just teaching at that level, then it's too easy for these, too hard for those at the bottom. So we're only moving a small group of people on. Now, those children could all be grade 6. But if we're only teaching at that grade 6 level, then we're not moving the children on. So think stage, but think individual. You're teaching 30 individuals. A number of them might be at the top, a number of them at the bottom, and a number in the middle. So you might have 3 different activities going on to make it easier for your planning, but you're teaching 30 individuals. So stage, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Nigel, and thank you, Sujat. Dr. Rosa, for your remarks, please. Rosa.
Thank you, Nigel. It was indeed a very good, very pedagogical presentation, and in which you went through all, the basic elements and gave lots of information for PE teachers, but also to all those who are involved in the process of working with physical culture. Remember, we have all this ongoing debate about this. I also congratulate the participants because there are so many questions. I mean, really good questions, which I think it would be worthy, to go through. I will read 2 of them because I will leave it to you if there's time, but I also have another question, okay? So one is very basic, but it's important. What is the difference between cognitive and affective domain, okay? And I leave that to you. And another one, in which she said, or he said, sorry, what is the difference between physical and health literacy? Okay, so I think that those 2 are very interesting. So thank you for participants for those interesting questions. Now, Nigel, I have one question related to, there is this idea that elite athletes are very physical literate, okay? And I know that you have done lots of research in the area, but I just would like you to let me know about this, because I have the belief that that is not necessarily true.
Mhm.
I have known many elite sport who, after they retire for whatever reasons, okay, there are many reasons, okay, they are not physically active, okay? So I think there is a myth around there in terms of that, okay? And another element that I will share, there is this concept in some places of the world that they don't speak about healthy living style, but good living style, okay? Because good living style includes uh, safety issues, physical activity as a whole, okay? And of course, there are other components which are very important. So the concept of healthy living changing to good living, and that one incorporates physical activity. So what's your opinion about that? And the other element, and this is my third question, is what happens during this pandemic time in terms of our physical activity, or because in some places the physical education program has suffered the most, because there is lots that have been attention have been given to all the other subjects, okay, except for physical activity, while in other countries the physical activity has become televised, and there are governments that are having programs for televised, I mean, in a specific time. So people are doing physical activity, but it seems that this is one thing, and then physical education is another thing. They are not seeing like this is part of the same, perhaps, family. So what is your opinion in that regard?
Right. Wow.
Thank you.
Okay. I've only got the 5 questions there then. I'll
I
try and
am the
get.
only panelist. I mean, Suji is also here. So sometimes we have like 5 or 6. So I did, 4, like 2
Right.
or 3 more.
I'll get through some quicker than others. So I'll tick off the shorter ones first. So cognitive and affective. Cognitive is our mind, it's our knowledge and understanding. Affective is more our emotional, our desire, our self-esteem, and so on. Now, the thing is with physical literacy, they're all related. Your physical, your affective, cognitive are all related. However, what we do is we just separate them apart a little bit so we can see that there are those differences. But essentially, we need to think of the individual as a meshed whole. So I'll leave that at that. Physical literacy, health literacy. I would say health literacy, you mentioned a number of things there about diet, about sleep, about appropriate sexual behavior, I mean, screen time. I would say these all fit into more the health literacy, whereas physical literacy has its own differences. But again, there are similarities between the two. There's lots of good papers out there that talk about health literacy, physical literacy, but I don't think we're going to gain a lot by spending a lot of time on that. Right, you mentioned about the elite, and again, one of my main concerns, certainly as I was a teacher, was how some elite athletes were, I would say, used and abused, because in the UK where I was teaching, we've got some great football teams, Liverpool, Manchester United, who you've probably heard of. And they would take boys at a young age and they would suggest they don't do other activities. They do a lot of training, but by the time they're 16 and earlier, they've told them you're not good enough and they go away. And those boys, their motivation just plummets. And likewise with older athletes, like you say, you get injured in a particular activity, which I did actually when I was in my mid-20s. I used to play rugby and basketball, which is a lot of jumping and hard contact. And I had well, 2 knee operations, and I couldn't play. So I started doing other activities. I started doing orienteering and running and windsurfing and different activities because I had physical literacy. Now, this is the difference. Physical literacy is that broad spectrum, right? If you are quite narrow, then your physical literacy is not broad enough. So a lot of elite performers focus in on one activity. So swimmers, gymnasts. So actually they don't have the experience. So when they finish their activity, for whatever reason, they haven't got the capabilities, they haven't got the physical or the knowledge to do other activities, so they drop out. So the other thing on that, physical literacy is a life course concept. So it's our engagement throughout life, not just at a certain time. Healthy living, good living, I think we've talked about that. I'll come into the pandemic, I think, because that's a really interesting one. Our government in the UK said you can go out for food, for medicine, and to exercise. So I'm sorry, but that's in the top 3 of life, right? We know we need food, we know we need to be safe, and we need to be well, and we know we need exercise. Yet, when they go back to school, oh, we need to do English and maths because they've fallen behind with their English and maths. Shall we do PE? Well, no, they've got to come together, and so we won't do as much PE. Hang on a bit. You were telling us exercise was important. You were allowing a fitness trainer. We had Joe Wicks, a fitness trainer, doing half an hour. He said it was PE. It wasn't. It was fitness training for anyone every day. Now, that's great, but it wasn't tailored to every individual. We had people getting injuries because some of the things he was doing wasn't helping. There was no learning going on. It was physical activity. So although it was better than nothing, it wasn't ideal. I've seen more people in the UK walking, running, and cycling than I have ever seen in my life. And that's continuing. So actually, COVID has been good in some ways because people have had time to get out and to take some physical activity, to take some exercise. So yeah, I think it is a challenge. I know it's a challenge in schools at the moment, and I've heard, I'm in contact regularly with the schools in India, and I know they've been so creative, setting challenges and providing all sorts of online activities, which is fantastic. And there's lots of material out there now. So I think we've got to keep the importance of PE up there, you know, where we know it should be. Okay, thanks, Rosa.
Rosa and Nigel. Kishore sir, your remarks, concluding remarks, please.
So thank you so much, Mr. Nigel Green. It was wonderful, and I think your deliberations were more specific with relation to the Indian context, because you have a lot of experience about the Indian, and most of your references has been tailor-made with the situation prevailing in our country. So that's how you could pinpoint on the issues, specifically on what exactly is required from our level, and especially on the attitude which you have mentioned is of very important. That fundamentally it is the attitude that matters, and if you have the right attitude, and it is the responsibility to develop the right attitude, which is with the physical education feature. I think that holds a lot of importance as far as all our respected participants are concerned. So in the physical literacy, the broad spectrum, if you want to involve the child and make him to be a part of it and make him to be literate, basically fundamentally the right attitude should come. And that is the duty of the physical education teacher and community coaches to ensure that he is motivated intrinsically towards the literacy, physical literacy, and he takes on it by understanding the merits of it. So that is what I think fundamentally required, and I think all the deliberations you have made was quite meaningful and excellent in the Indian context. But only one thing I have mentioned last time also, though we agree with you all in principle that whatsoever you have explained is quite scientifically true and also right. But how do we measure tangible on the literacy part? How do you say a person, a child is literate or not? What would be the benchmarking or yardstick? Whether you can rate that a particular child or a particular person is physically literate, depending upon age, gender, and on other related matters. Can we have a yardstick? If it is so, it becomes more easy to attain the target. But even though we would be attaining the target with your principles and we'll be striving for that, there is no one we can ensure that whether we have achieved it or not. We are not able to quantify it. So, do you suggest any, or do you have in mind, maybe it is not required in Europe because the population there is such that you can, within your look or within, you can measure, you can, within your, without having any sort of statistics, by mere assessment or observation, you can make out. But it is not like in the case of India, with the largest youth population of the world. And also this much of children, unless we have a yardstick to find out whether he is literate or not, we'll not be able to do that. So now, would you suggest to have something or what you have in mind for that? If you can kindly explain, we would be grateful. That's what I would like just to mention.
Yeah, and I think assessment is probably one of the most difficult areas that we deal with. There's a few issues here. First of all, your physical literacy is yours and yours alone. Your journey is yours and yours alone. So your reflection on that is in relation to you. How motivated you feel you are, how confident you are, how competent you feel you are, what your knowledge and understanding is yours. Yes, we can set out certain criteria and you can reflect on that criteria, and we've got that, okay, in relation to your motivation, confidence, competence, knowledge, and understanding. So we have criteria, but it's quite general because we could take hours looking at one person. And what would it do for us? Not a lot. So we need to reflect sort of holistically in relation to that individual and ask that individual to reflect on themselves. Now, we have a matrix which was published in this book, Physical Literacy Across the World, by Margaret Whitehead, and we encourage people to reflect on where they think they are along that journey, and it's progressive in relation to motivation, confidence, competence, knowledge, and understanding. I've also done some work with the heritage schools, and we've got a modified version of that allows the children to reflect again progressively on where they're at in relation to particular activities that they've done. So we can produce, and we have produced, different documents. But whenever you reflect, people want to compare. People want, as you mentioned, a yardstick. Well, he's in grade 6, so he should be here. And therefore people start saying, well, that's where you should be. And that goes against the whole nature of the concept. The nature is, where are you now in relation to those criteria, and what is your next step? So, for example, if you're able to do a range of skills to a fairly basic level, then we know we need to improve those skills. If you've got a limited understanding in relation to tactical awareness in a particular activity, then we know we want to improve that tactical awareness. If you find it difficult working with someone else or working by yourself, then we know we want to help you do that. So yes, there is criteria that we have that we can use, and we're happy to share it and for people to use it. But it depends how people then use it. So in some countries, Canada particularly, they've got a whole range of tests that they do. And it's how long can you hold a plank for? So, you know, and a shuttle run speed and all this. Well, we're all different. I'm quite tall, so I've got long strides, which is good for some things, but I'm not very agile. So I'm not going to be very agile. I might be quite strong, but perhaps not as strong as someone else. And the idea of then giving us a number, which is what they end up doing, out of 100. So I'm a 66. So what? What does that mean? And this is the problem with assessment as it is. So any reflections need to be against criteria that then suggest where we should go next. But I'm happy to, you know, I'd be really interested in developing that with you. If this is something you would like to work on, then what we liked, I'm doing something with Taiwan at the moment, because they're getting their teachers to think about this in a bit more detail. So I'd be quite happy to work with you or as a group of you in looking at how we can do that most effectively in India. We've got some in the UK, which is very simple. Where are you on a scale? You know, you want to engage. You want to be physically active. Where are you on that scale? Because if you're down the bottom, we know we want to get you more active. So there's a whole range of material that we've got that we can share with you. I'd be interested to see what you thought about it. So happy to set that up if you would be interested in doing that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nigel. So that is very, kind of you that you have accepted in principle that in India we need to have something like that, and
Yeah.
you are existing that metrics will go through and find out how best we can, and in case required, if we can, IP, International Physical Literacy Association, if you can prescribe for India a physical literacy metrics, which is specifically can be applied for the Indian conditions. So I think that will be a great support, because within India, there is a different mindset in the people. Unless you force them, or they intrinsically to get motivated is difficult. Either you should force, or they should see that there is something they will be getting some benefit by, that is one field where you are not able. Now we are trying to go for a bigger bargain, or we are trying to attract more students towards physical education and sports by motivating them by the returns they get in the field. They are more worried about the returns. Like, in the case of Olympics, if they participate, or international, what would be the return? We are trying to say that about the two international Olympic medalists last Rio Olympics, PV Sindhu and Sakshi Malik, that how much of immense benefit they were. You might be knowing them closely because you work in association with our Mr. Gopichand. So, the thing is that if you want to motivate the Indian, especially population, either it should be something which is compulsion, or something they should get. They should ensure that there is returns, and the returns either of this. If you say that you are physically literate and it is recognized, and you are there is some value for it, and the government and also the public, the society acknowledges, there will be a more visible change of more students, more youth taking up this physical literacy mission. So in Indian conditions, that would be required. So if IP International Physical Literacy Association, if you prescribe and also advise us to have a metrics or some sort of yardstick benchmark, then that would become more valuable, and with which Mr. Sujit, me and Dr. Usha will be able to take on this with more effectiveness. That is what my humble suggestion is. I think Mr. Sujit will agree to my.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, that was also one of the questions on how do you measure the outcome of a physical literacy program. And I think we'll be happy to actually discuss on how we can collaborate and put that structure in place, which can become a template for India, and then we can customize it.
That'd be really good. Yeah.
So thank you so much, Dr. Kishore, sir. Nigel doesn't need a wonderful session because you took us through the journey of physical literacy from the womb to the entire journey. It was so nice because Margaret Whitehead being, you said 80 and writing books, and I think physical literacy indeed has helped a lot. And you have given us a picture in India too, because often we are not aware of what's happening, but I think you could give us a picture of what's said in the country. And thank you so much for making us understand what physical, because all of us talk of physical literacy, but I think most of our participants could understand what it is. So on behalf of the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, Government of India, Khelo India, a big thank you and hats off to you, Dr. Nigel Green, because you came in a very short notice. I think 24 hours, you said yes. That's the biggest thing, because I need to give a big thank you to you. Even I think I can never ever think of getting an international resource person in a very short time. So thank you so much for being a part of a mission and for being a part of a family, because you're going to strengthen the physical literacy in India and show us. And I think in times to come, we'd like to see the pedagogy part, the teaching part, which you said we are carrying on from the seniors down below, but then you're going to bring about a change in the picture and how the piece to be handled through the physical literacy. So thank you so much once again, Dr. Nigel Green. Thank you so much for your valuable presentation. And I'm sure it's not just the beginning. You have set the ball rolling, and now I think there are many more dreams to be attained. And hope you could open up avenues in terms of projects, as rightly mentioned. We'll take up a project of this so that they could be a platform, would be helping us in establishing certain, maybe you call it yardsticks or a measure for the Indian, for the country of India. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me. And what I know I said this last time, I really appreciate the very thoughtful comments, from the teachers and coaches, but also from the esteemed academics who are on the screen at the moment, because I think it's important to challenge and question and to clarify, and this is how we continue to move forwards. So much appreciated.
Thank you so much, because you showed us challenging is important.
That's absolutely.
Ladder of the challenge. You said you've given us that. Professor Rosa, thank you so much, because I think everybody is going to be eagerly looking forward to your session tomorrow. And as I said, you have made it really international. And it's because of you, we have resource persons who happen to say that sharing and questioning and trying to strengthen the field of physical education and physical literacy. Thank you so much, Professor Rosa, for your valuable presence. And you make it a point of, like you're a part of family, and seeing that for every time you be among the panel. Thank you so much, Rosa. And with the smiling, because I always say, I felt Darlin isn't, the light is yet to come in terms of Darlin, but your smile is something, it's really brought an aura. It's energized. Oh, thank you, Rosa. Thank you, Dr. Kishore, sir, for your valuable presence and for instilling in, because always it's in mind, how do we measure? And sir's after fitness, and he would like to see that there's some change being brought in India. And we're indeed very fortunate to have Kishore, sir, because if he puts a step into it, he sees that it's done. So he'll open the doors and windows where, to open up more avenues. And thank you so much, Kishore, sir, for providing us not only this platform, but instilling in certain queries which can make things work and a new projects emerge. Thank you, Kishore, sir. I'd like to thank Mr. Sujit, because as I always say, you are the soul of the PE community coaching program. And I always keep telling to entire the panelists, our participants or the number is just because of you. And thank you so much for being a part of this program of P, because the morning session, most of it being managed by Mr. Sujit. Sujit, thank you so much. I'd like to thank my PE teachers. Thank you so much, teachers. I know it's been so hectic and tiring, morning 2 hours and evening 2 hours of session, and sparing your valuable time and your questions. Thank you so much for these valuable questions that you put forth today. And we look forward to further sessions, because tomorrow we have Rosa with us, who's going to take a session. And I'd like to thank Mr. Pranesh and Harihar for your technical assistance. And once again, thank you one and all. And namaste.
Namaste.